Nantucket Board of Health meeting is now open. Just to remind you all that these meetings are recorded, both visually and audio. As far as the agenda goes, when we get down to public hearing about large events in private homes, we will continue that if it is the pleasure of the board, because staff is going to try to meet and work out some of the issues that we brought up. So we should really wait till they come back. So is Greg or anybody here for that particular? No, then I would just ask if I could have a motion to continue that till next month.
Make a motion to continue the public hearing on large events till May 2025 meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 So we'll wait anxiously, because there's no sense for us to continue to talk in circles until we get a little firmer action about how it actually potentially could be administered by the town and enforced and so forth. Are there any public comments for any issues that are not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Minutes for the last meeting of March 26. Do I have any comments, suggestions, or edits?
Just got one thing on the things that we rent. Doesn't a bedroom have to include a closet?
I don't, we don't count it that way.
You don't?
Yeah, no,
Okay,
I don't believe the building department counts that.
all right, okay.
Okay. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes for March 26?
Motion to approve the
Second?
April.
Second.
All in favor? Chairman
Aye.
votes aye, the minutes are approved. Public hearing, update in the Board of Health Regulations, Chapter 223. John?
Yeah, so this is the final draft that we've sent back to town council and worked together a little bit to make sure all the language was good with them, and this is what's come back, so.
So you, Rocky and all, you're happy with it as in present form?
Yes, and note that this is also shared with Select Board during a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they were briefed on the contents. And it was provided as a copy for review for the community as well.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Are there any comments from the public related to these draft regulations?
Yes, Don Bracken, Bracken Engineering. I wish I was here. Unfortunately, I wasn't when you discussed these previously. But as John can tell you, this definition of a bedroom and how many bedrooms in the plans has caused a lot of confusion and a lot of aggravation over the years. So I just had some comments that you can consider or not consider. It sounds like it's in the final draft. But on the second page, on a bedroom, under A, one of the issues that we run into all the time is with cabanas. And there's nothing in here about cabanas. And when you read the literal definition, if a cabana is 70 square feet and has a window, we've been forced to call that as a bedroom. When in reality, there really, not many circumstances where it could even be converted into a bedroom. I think, that interpretation started a while ago. That was probably 10 to 14 years ago. And I think that came out of the fact that people took cabanas and they converted them into bedrooms. And now, in order to address, the sins of a few, we now interpret it so that everybody has to suffer, in that many of these cabanas in no way could be used as a bedroom, but they still fall in this sort of definition in the past interpretation. I just think there are a lot of situations with the configuration and design of these cabanas could be looked at and determined that, it's not a bedroom. And a lot of these definitions, in my opinion, take a very conservative approach on what we're calling a bedroom, which I understand, I'm not arguing against that. But, you know, the reality is, you know, I think the regulations should be, you know, match what the reality flow is actually gonna be. And there's all sorts of games that or architects end up having to play to get around the cabana situation by reducing the area or, you know, other types of configurations, or having them. We've had situations where we've had to take the walls off the cabana so that they were considered open. You know, some of the stuff, you know, I understand, I'm not criticizing how it's been interpreted, I understand it, but, you know, trying to explain it to the public and clients, it just seems kind of silly when you talk about it. Another thing I was hoping that could be considered in the future is, like B gives a list of things that aren't considered bedrooms. Couple of things that we've, you know, run into in the past is, you know, an exercise room with no window, no closets, no anything. That ends up being called a bedroom. We've run into wine cellars, which are set up as wine cellars, but they're more than 70 square feet. We've had to actually take wine cellars and reduce them down to 69 square feet. So again, I'm not asking you to change it last minute. That's why I apologize for not being here, but I think it's just something that could be considered. The other thing that has, I think, caused a lot of issues, and it's, you know, these new regulations try to, I think, spell it out for everybody, but I still think the whole theory misses the mark. On E, you know, it says any single-family dwelling with 7 or more rooms. Now, I've always scratched my head on this. It's been there for the 20 years I've been working here. Title V says 8 rooms. I don't know how it was 7, but the bottom line is it doesn't really matter when you get the houses that are the size. And so in Title V, it doesn't say that, you know, that when you use the room count, that you can't have, you know, the greater number of bedrooms. In other words, I'll try to explain it this way. If you have a house that has 11 rooms total, and then you divide by 2, that's 5.5, and you round down by 5. And even if in the house itself, it actually has 6 rooms that are labeled bedrooms, can be used as bedrooms, you know, Title V still, you know, says it's 5 bedrooms because of the definition. And the whole theory behind that is because once you get into a house that's that size, you know, you still only have 1 kitchen, you still only have 1 laundry room, or whatever. You know, the actual flow is not proportional at that point with the number of bedrooms, because there's X amount of flow for each house. And the way it's being changed right now is sort of what's been going on anyway, is that if a room looked like a bedroom, well, we're gonna call it a bedroom. So the Title V definition of determining bedrooms based on room count kind of has been out the window for some time. Now, in the past, what we used to be able to do is, you know, instead of, you know, labeling it a bedroom, even though it looked like a bedroom, just call it a den, call it an office, something like that. That way there was no blood on the hands of the Board of Health when they approved it, so a realtor can't come in and say, well, you know, it shows 6 bedrooms. At least technically, that's how it was handled in the past. And then the other thing that's not being changed, but that's in here and sort of on the same basis is G, where it says, you know, if you have a room that's over 400 square feet, one open room over 400 square feet, then that, you have to consider that 2 bedrooms. Now, I do recall when that was written, and I think that was to address people that were putting in like bunk rooms literally in their basements, you know what I mean? That were like that. But, you know, I can tell you, I have, now that stuff can happen anyway, no matter what, no matter whether it's approved correctly or not. But in almost all of our projects that we see, we always see this as a problem with, you know, obviously these larger houses, and you have entertainment rooms or large rec rooms in a basement, you know, they're almost all over 400 square feet. And realistically, you know, it's not a situation where they're gonna be used as 2 separate bedrooms. It's just not realistic. In a lot of those cases, you come down the stairs into an open room, and then there are other rooms off of that. So again, I'm not asking you to change anything, I wish I was here earlier to discuss it in case there were things that you wanted to change, but I just bring up those points and, you know, maybe we see in the future if, possibly things can be refined a little bit, but, you know, I'm glad things are clarified. There are things here that are great, that clarify a lot of things, but, I think our struggles dealing with the homeowners and architects is still gonna continue, and there's still gonna be a lot of questions asked, you know, so I just wanna make those points.
Thank you. Does the board have any comments on his comments, questions? John, do you want to comment, or then we'll move on?
Sorry, I'll try and probably kind of go backwards here from most recent to, your first points. So the 400 square feet, it's 400 square feet or 50% of the total floor area in the basement area, typically in the basements where we see these kind of things. So, it has to be both, or I think it says and, I'm sorry. Yeah, 50% of the floor area of a single level and 400 square feet. So, if the floor area is 1,000 square feet and you have one room that's 400 square feet, it does not count as two bedrooms down there. So, just point of,
Yeah, and we
Clarification
do
on that.
take advantage of that quite a bit, but there are a lot of situations where you're over the 50%. It depends on the size of the basement.
Right.
Or what other spaces are already finished in the basement.
Right.
As well, because that 50% is only compared to the unfinished space. Right?
I mean, we can look at,
Yeah.
I think if that's the total floor area, even if it's not full finished space, the board can consider whether it's all finished space or the the total floor area, even if that's unfinished space. Kind of how I might interpret it myself. In terms of cabanas, I think there's scenarios where we could tell there probably wouldn't be used as a bedroom, of course. And I think it was probably that interpretation going back years was maybe, a few bad apples, of course, and everything. And I think adding that definition in there and considering it, which was kind of in line with the definition of a studio, I think it's kind of more spelled out in these definitions right now when you have over 70 square feet and a bathroom, a half or full bath, that it would count as a bedroom. I think, unfortunately, the definitions aren't going to capture every single scenario. So the definition's going to try and capture most things. There's going to be scenarios where it does not, and that's just the way that it is. On the island, we've counted, if it's a labeled bedroom, a bedroom's a bedroom. In my experience of reviewing a lot of plans, I've seen 5 bedrooms and an office that had a full bathroom in it. And I don't consider an office with a full bathroom not to be a bedroom. Seems to be easily converted to a bedroom. So that's where that kind of scenario comes in, although that's been changed in these definitions that any room that incorporates a full bathroom would be counted as a bedroom. And yeah, in my experiences, it's always been 7 rooms or less on Nantucket. Again, the intent is we've always had strict regulations as we're a sole source aquifer, and the whole intent has been to protect our drinking water, and it's more conservative than Title V, although I think these are all things to consider living on the island that we do. So yes, those are some of my comments on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else
Thank you
have
for listening.
comments? I'll
Yeah.
ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
Yeah, I guess, whether it's a cabana or not, it has 3 walls or 4 walls. If it has a bathroom, it's going to contribute to the flow. And, pools do get used, so, I mean, we're concerned about the design flow. And it is a source, whether it's called a bathroom or a cabana, or if it has 4 walls or 3 walls. So I kind of don't have a problem with what we have.
So I need a motion to close the public
I
hearing.
just
and
want
then we'll
to
have a
get one
discussion.
question.
Well, we can have our own discussion, but I want to close the public.
Oh, okay.
So I need a motion to close.
Motion to close.
Do your second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. Now we can discuss it.
I got, would this all have to be laid out and someone's doing plans for a house before it even got to that?
Yeah, it's when we review building applications and the floor plans to see that the floor plans match up.
So the
you know,
building
correct.
department would have to abide by all this stuff? When they got the plan?
Approve the way that it is.
Yeah,
So they submit the building application with the floor plans to our office,
Right.
and we stamp it with the relevant septic permit that goes to that, you know,
Okay.
that allows for that,
all right.
that building to happen. So it's just an approval on our part to say that, you know, the number of bedrooms in the house is, the septic system's sized appropriately for the house
Right.
in terms of bedrooms.
Okay.
Any other comments from the board? Any questions? Thank you, it's a little clearer,
Okay.
but as pointed out, people will still
It's, you know,
do
yeah.
their best.
You know, I agree, you know, I just think it's not gonna catch every type of situation. You know, maybe people won't be sleeping in a cabana. I don't see a problem with cabanas with open walls in the summertime. That's typically when people are gonna be out in them in the pool and, so.
So, Rocky.
I'll just add, you know, it's difficult when you're creating definitions, when you're trying to describe what doesn't qualify as something, because it's a negative. I mean, you can call a room, you can get creative with what you're going to call it. So these definitions are designed to certainly capture what we most often will see, but, you know, as John and Mr. Cooper mentioned, these plans are reviewed separately, and this is providing, you know, some pretty clear guidance, I think.
Thank you. So what's the pleasure of the board? Do I have a motion to approve or not approve the new regulation update?
Motion to approve the new regulations for whichever ones these are.
The revised,
Chapter 2 through 223.
do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the update of the new definitions in regulation or chapter 223? Say aye.
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 Chairman says aye. Thank you very much for your work. Warren's Landing, Nantucket soil absorption system setback variance to drinking water well.
Yeah, we have the applicant here, Mr. Bracken.
Don Bracken Engineering. I think all of you were here when we were here for this project, maybe almost 10 months ago or something like that. Anyway, this was a covenant lot that was created from one main lot that already had two existing dwellings on it. It had the main lot dwelling and it had a two-bedroom cottage. And somehow it got through the process of being subdivided without anybody addressing the septic system issue. In both structures, because it was on one lot, they shared the same septic system. So the original thought was to do, after they divided it, put it separate ownership, to continue to use the same septic system and do a shared system agreement and documents, and that would have actually triggered a variance and all that. So then I was hired by the seller, and we came up with another option saying, listen, it'd be much cleaner and better for everybody if we actually put in a separate septic system for the new covenant lot, the new two-bedroom lot. So the board agreed, and we designed a system just for the two bedrooms, and we reduced the size of the system for the main house. And we also showed a well to be placed on the lot to serve the newly created two-bedroom house lot. When we went out about a month ago or 2 months ago to lay out the septic system so the septic installer could put the system in, we discovered that the well had already been installed, but it was installed in the old location as opposed to the new location that we came back here for you with. And it was designed in a location to service it as if they were sharing the septic system. So the setback to that septic system, it met the requirements. We didn't realize that that happened. Somehow there was some miscommunication. And so what we're asking the board to do is to add an additional variance to the one that you've already granted so that we can keep the well that was accidentally installed in that location. So it's not a Title V variance, it's the Nantucket well regulation variance that requires a 150-foot setback rather than the 100-foot setback. We did tweak the septic location a little bit from what you saw the first time to try to maximize the distance between where the well is today. And so what we're looking for is to have a 125-foot separation rather than a 150-foot separation. So that's the new variance request. And I think the other thing that's worth pointing out is that, you know, in this particular location, there are 4 or 5 locations where there's no defined direction of groundwater flow. This is in one of those locations. So where the groundwater just kind of, it's on top of the dome and kind of spreads out equally. So I think it's a positive that at least where the septic is going, it's not up gradient or exactly up gradient from the well as proposed. Again, as you know, we put the IA system in. There's a 2-bedroom deed restriction on the property already. And I think, you know, because it's a covenant lot and everything was already existing, there's been nothing new proposed or nothing new recently. You know, and obviously finances are an issue on this particular property. You know, we hope that the board will consider this third variance that we're seeking.
So in the future, I should put my well in before I ask permission, and then.
Well, there was a well permit for it, actually. That's another twist to this whole thing. And so somehow when the well driller went out and put it in that location, so.
Do I have,
We had something similar in the last couple of years about a well being put in. Anyway, comments from the staff, please. And then we'll ask the board.
We approved a bunch of stuff before. Those are still in place?
Yes, those are.
Okay, so the only amendment really is at 150 is the rule, is regulation out of 125 because of the well being
Correct.
put someplace.
And you know my opinion on the Nantucket regulations to begin with, so I won't go there again. But
Okay. Do you have any comments, John?
I think it's an unfortunate situation. I don't think it was a malicious intent or anything to be able to develop the property anymore. That 150-foot setback to a well was before IA systems, and this property is only 2 bedrooms and incorporates an IA system. I believe it'll be deed restricted as well to 2 bedrooms. I guess my only suggestion is they could have a water test done now to close out the installation of the well, and maybe come back in a year or the next 3 years and have water routine samples done yearly, just to make sure everything's okay.
Isn't that regulation that in theory, we're supposed to do?
Yeah.
In theory.
I
There
mean,
is a regulation.
Especially if
Yeah,
it's a
we are
rental.
supposed to do it
but
yearly.
It's definitely
But we could
recommended
put,
anyhow.
we could put that specifically in this
Yeah,
variance.
we really mean it in this time.
Do we have any comments, questions from the board?
It's a 2-bedroom,
Yes, it's a 2-bedroom house.
and can we restrict it so it'll always be a 2-bedroom, or do we need to do that?
Yes, it'll be restricted to 2 bedrooms.
It'll be restricted,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it'll be deed
All right.
restricted because it's less than 3 bedrooms, so.
Right.
Was the well tested for PFAS?
I don't
Do we
know.
have
Well,
that
the well, even though there was a
information?
well permit and it was already installed, the well drilling report is supposed to be submitted within 2 weeks or something. I forget what it is, supposed to be tested right away. So that wasn't followed through on. So that, as John said, we'll have to talk to the well driller and have him follow through on the permit requirements as they are. So I suppose if, we definitely could probably ask them to test for PFAS at the
Well,
same time.
isn't that in the regulation that when they drill a new well,
Oh,
they
yeah,
have
maybe you're
to
right.
test
So,
for it?
yeah.
That's, I mean, I don't,
Yeah, it is in the
and
regulation.
there
Yeah.
aren't that many people that drill wells on the island, I don't think. I don't know.
There's only
I-
2 people, so.
So how do they not know the regulations?
I'm not saying that they didn't test
Okay.
it, and they, I assume that they know what the testing requirements are, or they should, or we can remind them of that, but it's their responsibility that they didn't follow through with and submit those test results to the town. So we'll have to make sure that happens.
Right, so I think if the variance is granted, we'd probably be asking that their wells tested every year. Even though it's regulation, we'd put it specifically in this variance. Does that sound reasonable?
Tested for PFAS or tested just because of
Not
its
necessarily
proximity to the, right,
Yeah,
the
'cause-
testing because of its proximity to
Yes.
the AI system?
Because it's 50 feet, or 25 feet shorter than the regulations, and we can argue about the regulations, but that is the regulation.
Right. I mean, is there a way to, after so many years, they'd be allowed to come back to the board to see? if they
Yes,
have
I'd come back in 3 years,
Yeah, that'd be good.
providing, but they still have to get it tested.
Yeah, the thing is, and at least out in Nantucket, we have yearly well testing.
Yes.
So, just for, not PFAS, but just the drinking water. And that is
Yeah,
something.
so they're supposed to do that anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that every person has to test their well every year. I mean, unless it's a
every-
community well, but unless I missed that regulation. But
Yeah, that's what
It
we
would
have.
be for a rental especially.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank right
But
now. I
this
mean, it's
is-
definitely recommended to do yearly, the routine test, which would be for nitrates.
Yeah.
Which would be the kind of more the concern in
And
this
this is a
scenario.
covenant house, so it wouldn't be rented. You're not allowed to rent covenant homes.
Yes.
I believe Andrew has been looking at this regulation, might have some information. He's on the line.
Well, let's hear the regulation before we do something that's already been done or we do it inappropriately.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I don't think we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. So it's not a requirement to test annually unless you are renting your property. It is a Mass DEP recommendation to test for nitrates, nitrites, coliform every year if you have a private well, and then to test for additional parameters, including PFAS, both as an initial test as well as every 10 years. And if you're located near a PFAS source, which many people are on Nantucket, you might consider testing your water more frequently for PFAS.
Okay. So, the pleasure of the board. We hear a motion that someone wants to make. I get a sense the motion would be something like to approve the variance with the condition of,
Yearly water quality testing, drink, whatever that phrase is for drink, not PFAS testing, but the
Yeah,
drinking
routine.
water.
for a certain period of time, for 2 years?
Let's say
3. Is that a motion then, Carrie?
Can
Yeah,
we also make sure that they submit the PFAS testing that they're supposed to do when you drill a new well?
yes.
Yeah.
So Carrie's motion is that we approve the variance,
Or with,
that they submit PFAS
I didn't say PFAS.
data that they have to anyways, but we'll put that in the motion. And that they do standard water testing
for 3
for
years.
3 years. That is the motion. Do I hear
I'll
a second?
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman says aye, that is
Aye.
your motion.
Thank you very much.
Who knows? The island will have washed away, I don't know. Okay, 3 Millbrook Road, soil absorption system setback. bordering vegetated wetland.
All set?
Go ahead.
Okay, Don Bracken,
sorry.
Bracken Engineering for the applicant. Yeah, this is a tricky one, so.
I'm sorry, is this your specialty, may I ask?
Unfortunately, I
Because
guess it
you always
is.
seem to come to us with something a little
I like challenges, I guess.
unique.
Although I think we've come up with a good solution, but there's kind of a lot to this, so I kind of want to take us through it one step at a time. This property is in the Hummock Pond watershed. It has just over 17,000 square feet. Currently on the property is a main house and a cottage. The main house has 4 bedrooms and the cottage has 1 bedroom. That's what's built, that's what's existing there today. The system failed a Title V inspection for the Hummock Pond watershed. It's not in hydraulic failure, but it didn't have the separation between the bottom system and the groundwater. So that sort of triggered all this other stuff in motion. Looking at, first of all, what was the original approval and how many bedrooms were approved? The permit application that was filed in 1974 was only for 2 bedrooms, all right? So, that's a big problem, obviously, if there are 5 bedrooms on the property right now. I researched the building department records, and I know John did as well, and there's really no clear indications. There's a permit to expand the house, but it wasn't, no indication if it was gonna be for a bedroom or anything else. It was just pretty much left blank. Same with the cottage, it was only approved as a studio. And on that building permit card, it specifically said no human habitation, but they were gonna allow a sink and a toilet in there. Well, obviously, that's been converted to a bedroom in that one as well. So the plan is to upgrade the existing septic system. It's gonna trigger some variances and local upgrade approval even under the state. And also, the owner is aware that they're gonna have to convert that studio back into a non-habitable space. So, I stated that in the variance letter that, that's proposed under this application. The other thing we would be proposing is in the main house where it's 4 bedrooms, to remove a bedroom in the main house. And that would bring that to 3 bedrooms. Now, typically on these older properties, we always look at what was originally approved, and that's what the town has always honored, what was on the application. Like I said, in this situation, it was only approved for 2 bedrooms. But when you go through the file, there was an inspection report done, let's see. It was in January 1995, and occupancy permits were issued around that same time. And the inspection report had it down as 3 bedrooms. So I tried to make a point in the application that as of that period, it should be considered as a 3-bedroom. The inspection report was accepted by the Board of Health, and no action was ever taken since that point.
Could I interrupt?
Yeah.
So why was the inspection
I'm not sure if the
carried
inspection.
out?
What's that?
Or you said it was an inspection and it stated there was 3 bedrooms.
Correct.
Why was that done?
I don't know why the inspection was done. It could have been maybe for a sale, because back in 1995,
Okay.
we didn't have the required inspections like we have now, for Hummock Pond or the other districts. So, that's what we've designed. So obviously, it's up for discussion whether it should be 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms, and the design itself, we're using an IA system. Using a pressure distribution drip disposal system, which offers the highest treatment for a soil absorption system, above what would be a conventional type of soil absorption system. We do have constraints on the site. We have, wetlands to the north and to the west. What we did with the design is we located the soil absorption system, just a little further than what the existing soil absorption system is from the wetland. So we're asking for, under the town's regulations for the wetlands, the town requires a 100-foot separation, and we could only get a 21-foot separation in this case. And then under the state regulations, under local upgrade approval, because this has to be considered a repair and not new construction, the state allows a 50-foot setback to a wetland, so, and again, we're proposing 21, so it's still a pretty significant waiver to that. Also, the property to the south, number 119 Hummock Pond Road, has a well, and it looks from the records that the well that was on record that a permit was issued for was 100 feet away from where the existing system is. At some point, another well was installed, and there's no permit on file that actually put that well closer to where the existing leaching system is. So under this design, we still can't get a 100-foot separation to that newer well, but at least we're further away from that well than the existing system. So, so it looks like they.
Excuse me again,
Yeah.
so that well was not permitted?
We did not see a permit for that well. And I don't think the well would have been permitted because I think our septic system was in first and it would have been less than 100 feet. So,
It's not permitted, it doesn't exist.
well, it's still there, so, we're asking for the variance
Okay.
to it. So, and there are things missing in some of the files, so perhaps there was some permit that's just not in the files anymore, so we're not gonna take that chance, so. So basically, right now, the existing septic system is 65 feet from that well, and the proposed, will be 70 feet away. So, there's a small improvement on both ends with the wetlands and with that well. So, and I think obviously, as the letter states, I think we did the best we could with the constraints of the property and under maximum feasible compliance. And it will be a drastic improvement over what's been there.
Is that a site plan?
Yes.
Could you put it over here again?
It looks like the property was sold in 2023, so is that what triggered this, that it was sold and it failed almost a year and a half ago?
Yes, so, yeah, the current buyer knew that they would have to deal with this one way or the other. I'm not sure if they realized the issue with the number of bedrooms and so forth, but, it's on them, they bought the property, so they're responsible.
Yeah, where are you putting?
So this shaded area is the new field.
Is in field, yeah.
That's the new one. And underneath here, there are 3 trenches, here, here, and here.
And the well,
The well I was describing is right here.
that's the well that
Right.
just appeared.
Yep, and that's the one that is permanent. And they also have access to town water because they have frontage on Hummock Pond Road. It's town
So
water.
what is all this?
There's a house and
Oh, there's a
there might be a
house.
couple houses.
So they have access to town water.
Yeah, on Hummock Pond Road. If they want.
Right,
The
so,
abutting lot, not our lot. We don't have town.
right, but could they get town water with proper easements over other people's property or something? I mean, to take away the one wellish? And, is this a situation where a tight tank is a possibility? I mean, we're talking about a lot of septic systems close to drinking water. And I know tight tanks aren't the best, but it might be better than this.
I mean, I suppose that would be an option, but I think we have an option that works already, and, and as far as the town water goes, our proposed system is 100 feet from our own well. So
Okay, so
we
it's-
meet the setback there. It's
It's
just
the neighbor's water.
It's
is
the neighbor's,
water.
well. So,
Is Phantom Well.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So,
Is that well? So is the well that was discovered the well that's being used?
I believe so because
By-
it actually, we didn't go out there and discover it in the field. That was on a more recent septic plan that was done for that property. It was shown there as existing, so I think when they did the septic design, they located it, found that that was there, and we got it from that plan.
I guess I would just wonder if it's actually being used or if it was,
Based on the
I
septic
mean-
plan for that property, it appears that that's their well, that's what they're
And
using.
not this other permanent well. That's not being used.
I don't believe so, I forget how it was labeled on the plan, but.
There's two existing,
Any comments?
well, there's two existing
I'm
wells.
struggling here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm struggling too. It seems
I
like we
have
don't
que-
really know what well is in operation and I don't even see how we could begin to make a decision, given the facts that we have.
Well, there's two existing, according to the plan, there's two existing wells on a neighboring property, one per an old record and one per more, so we kind of really, they're both existing, at least on the record. So we're not necessarily sure which is the one that is the active, truly the active one at this point. Is that correct?
I mean, we could continue this to the next meeting, and
Yeah.
we can try to reach out to those neighbors and find out what the story is, or confirm what the story is.
Because that would, if they were using the other well, that would improve the distance, I think.
Yeah, there'd be
Yeah,
100 feet
it would,
if they
it
were
would
from
get
the old
a
well.
little more
Make
separation.
it easier, and make it
It'd make it
easier on your
client, easier on you and easier on us.
Yeah, yeah, we're happy to consider it. I know it's not the usual plan that we look at, and so maybe, next time you can consider or digest the whole bedroom count thing and come back and discuss it at the next meeting.
I think also if they're not, why are they using the well they're using if they could be using the other well? I mean, I'd like to
But-
have some clarity on that.
If I had to guess, and the well maybe went bad or
Yeah.
wasn't giving
Okay.
enough water, and
I
then they
think
just
we
put
need to
another
know
well
that.
in without getting a permit.
I just-
So we'll track it down.
Okay.
Yeah, if you track it
That's
down,
great,
the
thanks.
board would just ask that we do this next time.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The system you're putting in the ground, is it designed for 3-bedroom?
It's designed for 3 bedrooms.
Okay, so,
Correct.
so physically, what are you gonna do with the other 2 bedrooms?
Well, we're gonna remove 2 bedrooms from the property. We're gonna remove the bedroom that's in the little cottage, and we're gonna remove one of the bedrooms in the main house to bring it down to 3 bedrooms.
And how are we going to know that that happened?
That's my question.
We won't apply for a certificate of compliance until the work's been done and it's been confirmed by staff.
So would the plumbing be removed from the cottage?
Well, I mean, they probably still want a sink in there, but that's up to, that's
Yeah,
up
I
to
mean-
you. That is something, obviously,
You
and, to get the plan approved the way it's submitted, I'm sure that's a reasonable condition.
That's a reasonable, but
Yeah.
we can discuss that
Yeah.
once we get a little more information.
Yeah.
So,
Just put in a 5-bedroom. If you're gonna use it.
yeah, I would just then ask the board for a motion to continue this to next month.
Can I think the owner is on the Zoom. I don't know if she wants to add,
If he wants to add anything.
yeah,
If the owner is here, just identify himself.
Yeah.
or her, Erin Carroll.
Get there. Okay, you're on, Ms. Carroll.
Hi, how are you?
Right.
I've listened to the whole presentation and obviously we want to do what's right and what will be the most appropriate environmental thing for the home and obviously the surrounding area. That's what we're most focused on. I would like to apply for a 5-bedroom. I think we're trying to do, we're trying to work within the confines of what, we're dealing with. The house, when we bought the house, it was marketed as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, to be clear.
Right. Well, we will, I think we'll talk about this next month. We have the information. Anybody? We have
A motion to continue the discussion on 3 Millbrook till the May Board of Health meeting. Hopefully we'll have more, take some of the stuff that we've talked and see if that can be worked in. And, the concerns we have just in terms of how bedrooms are removed and/or distance and which well really exists and is town water a player somehow, any of that stuff.
So that's your motion, Karen?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Chair votes aye. We'll talk about this next month.
Thank you. You can keep
With a
that
little more
plan.
information, and
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate everyone's concern, but we'll find our way through it.
All right, thank you.
8 Ames Avenue, septic setback variance.
I have Mr. Malloy on, the designer, to speak about it.
Just give me a minute while I catch up with you all. Okay, who's speaking?
Dan Malloy's on the line, if you want to say anything, Dan.
Thank you, Dan Malloy. Looks like the video doesn't seem to be working on my end, but if you can hear me okay.
I can hear you, go ahead.
Yeah.
So 8 Ames Ave, this is a septic upgrade for compliance with the Nantucket IA requirements. There's a few dimensional waiver variance requests we have in order to fit this system on the property. So the property is encumbered by wetlands to do with the harbor, and there's been some changes as to where wetlands are, where water edges are and whatnot. So what we're looking for, it's a 1-bedroom existing house, so putting a 1-bedroom repair in its place, rating it to an IA treatment system, again, only 1 bedroom. The relief we're looking for is to allow the leach field and the tanks to be within 6 feet of a property line versus the 10 feet. And we're asking, excuse me, that we get the reduction, that's the Title V variance, and then local Nantucket regulations are asking for for the septic system to be within 6 feet of a property line versus 50. We're asking that a reserve area not be necessary to be shown. Given this is a repair and it's 1 bedroom, it's really restricted to one bedroom in perpetuity, so there's really there's no benefit to showing a reserve area, and there's really no other place to put it. We're also asking for relief from the 100-foot wetland setback. So we're about 67 feet away from the wetland, which is as far as we can get while on our property. We're asking for the 300-foot setback relief from the water body, being Nantucket Harbor. We're about 150 feet from the water's edge versus the 300 feet. And then the last waiver is whether we need to ask for it or not. Technically, we did ask for it. So the H20 loading requirement, the septic tanks are not in a driveway, so we're trying to make it easier for these people and keep it simple. So we've just got conventional septic tanks. Aside from that, it's a compliant system treatment capacity-wise. The waivers and requests we're looking for are really dimensional to make everything fit on the property. And that's it.
Thank you. Comments, John?
No, I mean, it's an overall improvement from what exists there now. So, I mean, it is pretty much the best case scenario right here. So, and the neighboring lot is served by town water, so there's no impact there. So,
Comments from the board? Questions from the board?
Yes, let me ask a question. So he wants variances. So we're gonna leave it, if with this, we give him the variances, what's gonna happen to the system? Can
it's,
you pump it out?
No, he's proposing a new system to go in the
Okay,
ground
fine.
right there, yeah, with an IA and everything
Alright,
for
okay,
Mattocket.
fine.
He just needs the
Okay,
relief on the property line setbacks and
Right.
some of the Mattocket stuff, so,
Well,
and the wetlands, and it's, you know, it's kind of like the last application where it's, there's wetlands on the property and you try and do the best you can here, so.
can I ask a question? Would a tight tank not, I mean, this is like a hop, skip, and a jump from where we just had the discussion about area where they are required to have tight tanks, correct?
It is, yep, it's.
So would that not be better for the environment since it's a one-bedroom?
Pump it out.
I'm sincerely asking, you guys, you're more of an
mean-
expert on this than I am.
Well, obviously in theory, then nothing's going in the ground. It's a matter of it being pumped and maintenance and being taken care of. With that said, tight tanks are last resort option due to that fact that, there's alarms that have to work before it overflows and, things can go wrong. So this is just a longevity type of a system, so.
Okay, so he's asking for what, 3? Yeah, four.
It's
And
like
substantial.
right on the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, tight tank is an option. And that's, again, I'm not throwing that out there. It's just that this is on the water. We're talking, a huge, huge reduction in setbacks, not, a couple feet. And we are concerned about Mattocket Harbor, with the eel grab. I mean, there's a whole lot of energy that's put into trying to keep the Hither Creek, Mattocket Harbor. This kind of seems to be somewhat counterproductive when there is, tight tank's not a beautiful alternative, but it's an alternative.
If I could make a comment quickly on that.
Please.
John, I'd ask you to clarify one thing. So under Title V, in this case, a tight tank is not allowed because it's a viable alternative. But for the local Mattocket regs, in terms of a tight tank requirement, is that everything on the other side of the bridge? Is that only a certain section of Mattocket?
That's correct,
That
yeah.
is correct,
Yeah, the
yes.
other side of the bridge is required.
The other
And-
side of the bridge is required. This side of the bridge, it would
It's
have
an
to be-
option, or is it not an option on this side of the
It would be
bridge?
an option if there's no other alternatives.
Right, correct, yeah, so.
And if we don't approve it,
Unfortunately,
there's no other
the way
alternative.
Title V reads, I believe, is because there's an existing system and it's viable to put one back even with dimensional relief, that's what we have to do.
And that's if you get dimensional relief, correct? We don't have to approve dimensional relief. That's why we're talking about it, correct?
Right, the board doesn't have to approve the relief. They could, I suppose you could not want to grant the relief and, because the only Title V relief we're looking for is a setback to a property line. The Mattocket regulation relief wouldn't pertain to the Title V requirements. So you'd have to not want to grant the relief for the septic components to be within 6 feet of a property line versus 10. The other dimensional relief is strictly Mattocket based. It wouldn't apply to the tight tank requirement in Title V.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can
Go
ask
right
a
ahead,
question. Dan, does this require approval for Concom? Do you need to apply to them for this?
Yeah, we've applied to them. The Concom is holding their meeting in approximately 5 minutes. They've already reviewed it once. I'm anticipating them to approve this tonight. They were waiting on a piece of information from the state. So I expect they'll approve that today.
Okay.
So, pleasure of the board.
Do we continue this until we find out what Concom does?
Oh,
Well, I'm just throwing out alternatives.
I like,
Not a motion, I'm just,
Yeah.
it's a point of discussion, that's all.
it's a point of discussion, but I would really,
Prefer to.
it doesn't, we should make our own decision.
Okay.
Continuations are for if we need more information, otherwise,
Okay.
we'd never finish anything.
If I can add one piece onto that, if you do decide you want more information or want to continue for whichever reason is brought up, with the conservation, we assume we're going to get the conservation approval this afternoon, but as part of their approval, we're expecting a time frame restriction on installation. So their permit may come with a time frame restriction of no work to be done between April and September. And that has to do with they're concerned that there could be piping plovers in the area, even though the beach is quite a far distance away. So their permit may come with a restriction on time. So we may have time to discuss this further if necessary.
Pleasure of the board, what do you want to do? We could continue it and wait for that, or we could make a motion to approve or disapprove the various variances.
I'm just not comfortable with the whole package. I mean, whether it's a Title V, state, or Nantucket, I'm not comfortable with the whole package. And the
You're
whole
not-
package,
you're not-
I am not comfortable with the
I
whole package.
understand. Ann?
I thought it was pretty straightforward. I mean, I thought it was a yes, you know.
Okay.
Step one.
Meredith, how do you feel?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know either.
You don't know either. Oh, God.
How do you feel?
I would like to resolve this, but we can continue it if you want to, really. Because nothing's going to happen, because Concom, if they approve it, aren't going to let them do anything until the birds are gone.
I mean, if I was to make a motion, I would to deny the variance, but it sounds like there really is some.
You would deny the variance, Ann would approve the variance. These two don't know, so we'd have, okay. I will accept somebody's motion to continue this until next meeting.
Next month.
But what do we need to find out? What
That's what
would happen
that's my
between
next-
now and then?
That's my next question. Nothing. We
So
know
if nothing's gonna happen, we have to decide right now.
Good.
Mr.
John.
Chairman, I mean, I will comment and say this is an overall improvement from what does
Yes.
exist now. And, unfortunately, we might be coming back 5 or 10 years for a tight tank for this property, who knows, based on what happens with erosion and everything. So,
Right, but
but as this stands now, is the best case scenario for
Yes.
a
the
a system.
regulations would be really sketchy for us to have them put in a tight tank. It's the best case scenario at this time.
Yes, correct.
Right.
I agree with that.
I guess I feel that unless there is a really strong reason not, the board should go along with the recommendation of the Department of Health.
So would you like to make a recommendation or a motion to approve the variances as outlined in the proposal?
I will do that.
Do I hear a second? So if I second it, the vote would be 3-2.
Yeah.
Well,
Are you guys abstaining or are you?
if nothing's gonna change,
Right,
then I'll second it.
you second it, okay. We have a motion before us to approve the various variances that were submitted to us in the proposal. All in favor, say aye. All in favor?
Aye.
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 No.
Chairman says aye, the vote is 4-1. Variances are approved. It was an
Thank you.
educational discussion for me, actually. Well, I'm not going to start, I'm not here for philosophy, let's move on. 72
Oh, boy.
Arkansas Avenue variance not to upgrade septic system from failed Title V inspection.
I mean, I live on Arkansas Avenue, and I do know David. I live on Arkansas.
So you're good.
And I'm not sure if I should be participating, because I
Okay.
totally understand this. and
It's
I'm
up, it's
biased.
up to you.
Yeah, I think it's probably best if I just recuse myself
Okay,
from this
then you
one.
have to leave. You can sit.
Yeah.
You can become a citizen.
Go out there.
You can speak as a citizen. Okay, John, do we have the petitioner here or not?
Yes, I'm not sure if the property owner would like to speak.
Would you like to speak, sir? To the microphone, and identify yourself, please.
My name's Dave Cocker. I live at 72 Arkansas Avenue. What I wrote in the variance pretty much is all I have to offer, and I'm here for questions.
Comment, John, and then we'll ask the board for, if they have questions for anyone.
Yeah, in 2010, there was a Title V inspection done, which documented hydraulic failure, as well as failure for Nantucket Harbor watershed regulation for groundwater separation. At that time, when that Title V inspection was done in 2010 and failed, that was right around, well, not right around, but that was in the time period where there was lots of talks about sewer going out to Nantucket, and there was many administrative consent orders that were signed between the Board of Health and many property owners who put deposits down and agreed to install an IA system if sewer did not go out there. Of course, we know sewer still has not made it out to Nantucket, and all those agreements expired, and those folks have all put IA, well, to my knowledge, have put IA systems in the ground. So, so I think was the position here with Mr. Cocker that, you know, there's hopes that maybe sewer was going to go out. So it was, of course, no one wanted to spend that money until they were sure that sewer was not going to be there. I did not find an administrative consent order with the Board of Health in the file for 72 Arkansas. So, you know, unfortunately now it stands in hydraulic failure, and due to that, it does need to be upgraded, you know, the leach field at least. So, but you know, as we all know, the septic loan programs is available in this situation for upgrade.
Comments from the board, questions from anybody on the board? Meredith?
Haven't we granted this type of variance? We did something similar maybe it was that they didn't have to hook up to town water, or they didn't have to hook up to town sewer. We did some sort of variance for somebody. That was like while they owned the home, and then if the house ever sold, then it had to be upgraded. Or they had to hook up, it was
Right.
something.
But this is a technical failure. This isn't just separation or anything. I have vague remembrance, but I'm not sure it was a technical failure of a septic system. If I
Mr. Chair,
recall.
this is also was noted as a hydraulic failure, you know, evidence of backup into the
Yeah.
D box, and so overflowing.
Yeah, it's
So,
overflowing. And there is a loan process.
Not into the residence. There was no overflowing into the residence. Ever.
So, but the system isn't working.
No, it works fine. It's just that it failed in 2010. Is it possible for me to get another inspection?
Oh,
It's 15 years later. It's been working fine. I've been pumping it. No backups.
Comment on that, John?
When you have a inspection done by a licensed Title V inspector, I mean, they've documented it as failure, and that's the report that we go by.
And what
You
year
know,
was
they're-
that inspection?
2010.
so that's 15 years.
That's 15 years.
So,
Isn't something supposed to have happened in 15 years?
there would be, you know, either backup or ponding would be happening on, on the ground level,
No, I mean
especially.
legally.
Oh, legally,
Yeah.
yes, well, yeah, absolutely. As I said, this was all kind of during the period of when there was talks of sewer being run out there, so
I
people
see.
weren't,
Okay.
wanting to invest the money to fully upgrade a system when,
And it's, Nantucket sewer is not going to happen in our lifetime. So,
Not ours.
no.
Yeah.
So what's the pleasure of the board? How do we feel about this? Before I speak my mind. Jim, you look like you're contemplating a statement.
I mean, is it overflowing?
I haven't witnessed it. I mean, I'm going by the Title V inspection report, which
When
showed
was that?
evidence, 2010.
So why don't we have another inspection?
If that's what the board would like to do.
Yeah,
I mean, if the last inspection was 2010,
I know. You would think that it
I
has
would think-
overflowed the whole street by now.
yeah, if it's overflown for 15 years.
I also think you have one person living there. Like, it's not, there's not a lot of,
Activity.
right, on the system. It's different than like my system that has 5 people in it. And-
Right.
Like, there's less
I have a,
flow, I would think that, so I would think like it's 15 years, it's not, nothing bad has occurred.
I have a, I have a,
Two people at this address,
Oh, okay.
my
Yeah.
partner and I.
go ahead, sir.
There's 2 people at this address, my partner and I.
Sorry,
It's all right, I just,
Right,
but
but,
still not a lot of
no.
right,
pressure on the system.
right, Meredith's point is well taken. Also was well taken, the point that it is, we do have a report of a failed system, and that, I would suggest that we ask for a reinspection, and just because it's been 15 years, and then deal with it once we see those results, confirm that it's failed, and then we might consider, as we may have done before, if the house is sold, or we could consider that we have to ask the gentleman to take out a septic loan.
Yeah, we have to just have another inspection.
Yeah, okay. So the consensus of the board is that we will, we shouldn't even met today, we're just pushing everything off. That we'll talk about this next month, and in the next month, next 4 weeks, just obtain another inspection for us, sir.
Sounds good.
Okay?
Yep.
That's the consensus of the board, and I'd like a vote to continue it to next month. Motion to continue.
Motion to continue until.
Second,
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
If we
Aye.
continue next month, and after the inspection, we'll discuss it again. I think after 15 years, 1 month delay should not make a significant difference. Okay. We discussed the public hearing, that we're going to let the staff do some little work. And then,
Let me talk about that for a sec. I mean, we said that, but it's getting later and later in the year.
I know, but we
And I
had-
thought I thought they were gonna have done the work.
well, it's a matter of getting everybody together, the police, the health department,
Travel and tourism was
the tourism.
going to be involved.
I sympathize with you. I would have liked this done, but I think, like everything, we have to do it right, and people are busy. All right? Environmental Contamination Administration update, administrator update.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. John, could you share my slides, please?
Yep, give me one moment. I have to find. All right. Is that on there now, Andrew? or-
I can see your screen, but I don't see my slides.
Okay.
I see the agenda, or the packet, rather.
Okay.
But if you click on the packet, or the Environmental Contamination Administrator at the bottom, that should pull up my slides. Yeah.
How about now?
Yep, and then maybe just zoom in a little bit.
Zoom out.
Zoom in, please.
I think I have to do it on two screens here.
Yeah, you just need to scroll over now.
Yeah. That was a little too far. All right. How's that?
I still can't see the slides. I can only see the leftmost extent of the PDF.
Okay, one second.
Yeah.
How's that?
That is great. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, I will get started. Hi, everyone. For those who don't know in the audience, I'm Andrew Shapiro, the Environmental Contamination Administrator, and I'll be giving an update on PFAS activities in the town. John, next slide, please. So I've switched to using slides just because these updates have got a little bit lengthy. I expect this to be probably a 15 to 20-minute update, and the agenda will include a data update as per usual. I'll be also going over our updated PFAS well sampling fact sheet. I can give a few more details on Mass DEP's source discovery investigation. I'll briefly talk about a few additional data analyses we have coming up and give an overview of anticipated communication activities. John, next slide, please. So I have a big update on our data statistics, analysis, and mapping front. Previously, I've been giving updates on our voluntary and Board of Health regulation data. I've also been giving one-off updates on Mass DEP samples as they trickle in. For example, last month, I gave an update on 3 additional Mass DEP samples that they sent us as part of their source discovery investigation. But now we finally have all the data from their source discovery activities together. So if you look in the third column, this is Mass DEP's source discovery investigation data, and I'll just briefly walk through this data. So by my count, Mass DEP has evaluated 86 properties associated with this investigation, and they have detected PFAS in 63% of those properties, which is a very high percent of properties and frankly concerning. They've also identified 23 properties that exceed the PFAS 6 Massachusetts maximum contaminant level. That's a fair proportion of the properties that they have evaluated. It's 27%. Again, it's concerning to see that many detects over that state threshold. And then perhaps even more concerning, I've tabulated 9 properties, all on Tom's Way and on adjacent streets, that exceeded the imminent hazard threshold of 90 parts per trillion for PFAS 6. So that's 10% of the properties that Mass DEP has evaluated as part of this investigation. And the maximum concentration in this data set is 787 parts per trillion, which is screaming high. And that's on Tom's Way. Got a couple of notes on this data. I just want to point out that I'm tabulating data at the parcel level, and that matters for the percentages and the counts that we end up getting. So, for example, several of the properties that have imminent hazard levels have multiple samples. As part of their investigation, Mass DEP has collected an initial sample, a duplicate. Sometimes they're getting confirmation samples. They're doing post-treatment samples. So, for any one property, they might have 4 detects over the imminent hazard threshold, but that gets boiled down to 1 for this data analysis, because I'm just trying to show data at the property level. Kind of a similar thing going on with the fairgrounds investigation, which is incorporated into this data set. At the fairgrounds site, for example, at 4 fairgrounds, there was an exceedance of the state standard of 20 parts per trillion. There were also detects of PFAS in below that threshold, but nonetheless detects. On the same property, there was also a non-detect, and that all gets boiled down into tabulated as an exceedance of the 20 part per trillion threshold. So I just want to point that out for anyone who's maybe doing their own analysis at home and thinking, I saw a lot more data points above the imminent hazard threshold, and that's the reason. So that was the Mass DEP data update. Quick update on the voluntary and Board of Health regulation data. So the column that begins with 107. Not many updates here. I'm getting the sense that the lab is maybe a little bit behind. They do say that turnaround times can be up to 6 weeks. And so unfortunately, when I froze this data for this update, I got over a dozen data points from Mass DEP that are not reflected in this tabulation. Unfortunately, that's just one of the challenges of kind of preparing this data table and getting it ready for the Board of Health packet. But that can be included in next month's update. I have already put those data points in their property files, and I've also followed up with the folks who received their letters by email. John, next slide, please. So this is showing the data distribution at a little bit more of a granular level. So this is similar to what we've seen in the past, but I've added another layer for the DEP data. The voluntary and Board of Health data on the bottom panel should look very familiar, but now we can see the statistical distribution of the DEP data. You can see that detects of PFAS are much more common in the Mass DEP data set. That's similar to what was shown on the table before. And you can see that there are imminent hazard conditions detected in the DEP data set. Super concerning levels of PFAS in those samples. So it's just another way to look at the data. I find it interesting and just helpful to think about the data. John, next slide, please. So all of this has been rolled into our map. Because of the nature of the Mass DEP data versus the data generated from voluntary efforts and the Board of Health regulations, I'm tabulating the data separately. So for each buffer, you can see I'm tabulating the voluntary and Board of Health data in one column, and I'm tabulating the DEP data separately, but also providing the totals to help guide how to think about this data. So as you can see, buffer number 1 in Nantucket, we now have the DEP data rolled into there. We have buffer number 2, which is a new buffer and corresponds to the imminent hazard conditions identified on Tom's Way and adjacent streets. So this is a new buffer that's showing if you live in that buffer, you live within half a mile of an imminent hazard condition. So that's a new buffer on here. I've also pulled in the airport site boundary. So you can see that in the bottom right here. Buffer number 3 is our mid-island buffer and has expanded a little bit now that we've added the Mass DEP data. Certainly concerning to see that expanding week after week. But incorporating the DEP data is definitely a big step forward to getting a better picture of PFAS conditions on the island and just greater data transparency. So compared to this one, that buffer has, or compared to last month, that buffer has expanded both north and south. And then we have buffer number 4, which is our west of town buffer, which is still driven by 1 detect over 20 in the voluntary and Board of Health data set. Mass DEP has done a little bit of sampling here, and they have not detected a concentration over 20. Doesn't mean that these conditions are not concerning. That's just the reality of the data that Mass DEP has collected so far. John, next slide, please. This recaps mostly what I said before, but just as an overview, the Mass DEP investigation is intended to be targeted, so that likely explains why we're seeing higher concentrations and higher frequency of detection and higher frequency of exceedances of the 20 part per trillion standard. So also of note, the Mass DEP investigation has detected conditions over the 90 part per trillion imminent hazard threshold, and that has not been detected in data from the voluntary efforts and from our Board of Health regulations. I'll also just point out that most of the data generated in our voluntary efforts and Board of Health regulations actually occurs outside of the buffers. As a reminder, there are still detects of PFAS. They're outside of the buffers. They are just below the threshold of 20 parts per trillion. There's no safe level of exposure to PFOA or PFOS. So there are still concerning levels of PFAS outside of those buffers, but the buffers are a way to kind of compartmentalize and think about where PFAS occur in the highest concentrations on the island. John, next slide, please. Just a few caveats on the data. I know I've provided some caveats already, just a few more. This does not include data collected from the airport MCP project. It doesn't include the UMass Mass DEP private well study, and there may be a few other data sources not accounted for. I hope to be able to provide further updates and continue to incorporate more data into these maps. As a placeholder for now, we have the airport site boundary included on this map. The data may not be representative of all conditions on Nantucket, so we still may get detects above 20 parts per trillion in other places. I certainly expect we will get additional detects of PFAS at concentrations below that threshold, which is always going to be concerning. And we're generating a lot of data through our Board of Health regulations, and Mass DEP is continuing to do samples. So I'll continue to be updating on this data. One more caveat, the data have been collected at different times, different groundwater conditions. In some cases, they may be collected at different depths. And we're also mixing a variety of laboratory methods here. So for example, the testing through the health department uses EPA method 537.1. Mass DEP has been using EPA method 533 for drinking water. That's a complementary method to method 537.1, which is what we're using through the health department. And the fairgrounds investigation uses a method for groundwater sampling rather than drinking water sampling. So that's EPA method 633. All right, John, next slide, please. So I have hinted at our updated PFAS well sampling fact sheet at the last couple of Board of Health meetings. So I'm happy to report that we do have that fact sheet available now. It is on our website, and I also have the link provided here. There are a variety of updates, but I'll just highlight 4 real quick. This includes an option to reach out to your doctor or the health department at all levels of PFAS concentrations. This also includes an option to pursue treatment at concentrations below 20 nanograms per liter for the PFAS-6. We are also recommending confirmation testing after installation of treatment, just to make sure that the treatment that you've installed is actually working. And we've included streamlined reporting procedure and updated contact information for concentrations above 20 nanograms per liter for the PFAS-6. So the fact sheet is included in our packet here. It might be a little bit too small to see from here, and I don't recommend that we kind of read through the whole thing. But I definitely encourage people to look at this. And I'll be reaching out to folks who have detects of PFAS with this fact sheet. And I'll plan to do that for everyone who has a detective PFAS in the emails I receive from the Barnstable Laboratory. So it's a 2-page fact sheet. Here's our second page. And John, I think you can go to the next slide. So not only do we have more data from Mass DEP, but Mass DEP also issued the Verdantis Field Investigation and Data Analysis Summary that was on March 27th. And we promptly put this up on our website on the existing timeline that we have for the fairgrounds investigation. So just, I'm going to kind of share some of the conclusions of this report. These are conclusions from Verdantis and not from the health department. So hoping to just pass along that information for those who haven't had time to read through the report and for any community members who are interested. So the purpose of this report was to summarize the limited subsurface investigation and associated activities conducted between November 2024 and January 2025, as well as to focus on identifying the presence and extent of PFAS at the Fairgrounds campus. John, next slide, please. So just a quick recap before I get into the conclusions. If you remember from maybe 2 months ago, Mass DEP detected PFAS at, I believe it was 4 fairgrounds above the standard of 20. They also detected PFAS in a number, the majority of the other samples they collected, and they also detected PFAS in some soil samples. So on to the conclusions. I'll just read through them real quick because I think they're important to share. So they concluded, the laboratory analytical results of soil samples collected indicate that PFAS-6 are relatively low and are distributed relatively evenly across surficial soil at the site and surrounding town-owned properties, with no indication of a PFAS source at the surface. Furthermore, there is no evidence indicating that soil near the water table is impacted with PFAS at the locations investigated. On to the next conclusion. The highest concentration of PFAS-6 at 22.33 nanograms per liter was detected in the groundwater sample collected from the monitoring well VDT-4 FG-4, which is located on the site, i.e. for Fairgrounds Road, and is directly behind the Nantucket Public Safety Complex building to the east. The next highest concentrations were detected at the monitoring wells VDT-Weight-12 and VDT-2FG-5, which are both located on town-owned properties and on the site, that is at 2 Fairgrounds Road, respectively. They also concluded that concentrations of PFAS-6 were not detected in groundwater samples collected from the monitoring wells located furthest to the west and southwest of the site. And bear with me, there's one more page of conclusions. They said, there does not appear to be a correlation between concentrations of PFAS-6 detected in soil samples and groundwater samples. PFOA and PFOS were detected in both soil and groundwater samples. However, the concentrations of PFOA and PFOS detected in soil samples were relatively lower than the concentrations detected in the groundwater samples. In this report, they said that select non-regulated PFAS substances were detected in groundwater samples, including PFBS, PFBA, PFHXA, and PFPEA. Non-regulated PFAS substances were not detected in soil samples. And their last conclusion was a minimal hydraulic gradient was observed based on the results of this investigation. However, the groundwater elevation data indicates that the groundwater flow is in a northerly direction toward Old South Road. Mass DEP also reached out to me to let me know that they will be conducting additional sampling on April 9th, or they did conduct additional sampling on April 9th. They were planning to go to 3 properties on Mid Island and 3 properties a little bit west of town. So kind of overall wrapping up these conclusions, definitely concerning to see concentrations in groundwater above that threshold, and frankly, any detect of PFAS. And at the same time, frustrating to see concentrations of this magnitude with no identifiable source. These are the conclusions from Verdantis and Mass DEP. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to forward them to Mass DEP. All right, last few updates should be quick. The town of Nantucket has engaged TRC to do PFAS fingerprinting in the area. This is a contract that was approved in October, I believe. We've got a couple of public records requests related to this. We haven't received any reports from TRC yet, but I plan to continue to update the board on this project. We also recently got a contract with TRC approved at the April 9th select board meeting. I don't have the fully executed copy of that yet. This will be my first project that I'm the project manager for. So I'll keep updating you all on that project as well. Last update for me, I'm planning a number of communication activities. We're planning to get the word out about PFAS contamination on the island on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I have about 10 social media posts drafted, and we really just need to get them out to the public, hoping to cover topics like the importance of testing your water, property transfer regulations, how to shop PFAS free, and how to talk to your doctor about PFAS. Hopefully those will be good starting points for creating some original web content and some fact sheets, and we're thinking about hosting a couple of community meetings. So I hope to have more updates on that. I am hoping to get an article about PFAS in the newspaper. I'm planning on starting a PFAS newsletter. Again, I have a draft ready to go, and we basically just need to get that out. I'll have some information on how to shop PFAS free in the town's Earth Day newsletter. And lastly, me, John, and Rocky will all be at the NAREB meeting on May 28th, and I'll be presenting on property transfer regulations. Last update, quick one from Mark at the water company. He let me know that he is planning to be pouring concrete by the end of the next week for the new treatment system. And that's it for my update. Happy to take any questions.
Andrews, Carrie.
Yeah, hey, Carrie.
How you doing?
Good.
For the Mass DEP, we're expected to report when it's above 20. Does that skew the numbers that they're seeing and why, they have a higher percentage? Because if we're below 20, we aren't, people may not be sending it because it's not that expectation.
Yeah, they're doing a targeted analysis, so they are trying to identify where people are exposed to the highest concentrations, and the kind of data generation method for our Board of Health regulations is a little bit more random. It's not necessarily occurring next to PFAS sources. It's just wherever people are selling their homes, which is likely anywhere and everywhere on the island. So I think that explains the kind of different statistical distributions between those data sets. And, frankly, it's a good thing that Mass DEP is focusing their efforts on the highest concentrations. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be filling it in with our own town regulations, though.
Yeah. And in terms of the voluntary versus Mass DEP, is there any, you've been able to rule out that there's not properties being double counted? That
It's
they
a
would
great
be
question.
voluntary, but they're also in the Mass DEP, and are they appearing twice, or are they being counted once, even though they're in both databases?
It's a great question. I believe there are 2 instances where that is the case, and I think they are double counted. I thought it was important to kind of show the whole distribution of the Mass DEP data and the whole distribution of the Board of Health regulations. I'm open to not double counting, but I don't know where they should go. They had essentially the same results. They fell into the same category. So though those are the kind of details that I'm glad you're thinking about. Currently, they're represented in both, and it's just a handful of properties.
Okay, thank you.
It's Malcolm.
Hi, Malcolm.
Is there anything we should be concerned about the fact that there's different methodologies used? What's the correlation of the three methodologies?
Yeah, it's another good question. So for the drinking water standards or drinking water methods, we're using 537.1. This is targeting long chain PFAS. And Mass DEP is using 533. 533 has 11 PFAS that are not included in 537.1, but 537.1 has 4 additional PFAS that aren't included in 533. They all include the same PFAS 6 and kind of core PFAS that we really want to be monitoring. But there are some differences, and no methodology is going to capture that whole suite of PFAS. I think it might be most important when doing fingerprinting. I think that those unregulated contaminants are going to be particularly important for fingerprinting and tracing PFAS. And so there might be some incompatibilities between the Board of Health data and the Mass DEP data. And then on 1633, the methodology for the groundwater monitoring at fairgrounds, that's the appropriate method for groundwater sampling. And it's a wider suite of contaminants. It tests 40 different PFAS species, but it's not appropriate for drinking water, given things like potential turbidity and other organics in the groundwater.
So the specificity, sensitivity, these must be very specific for these tests if they can detect the differentiation between all of the PFASs.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing, to be honest.
I mean, to me, that's almost too amazing. I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
someone who had got frustrated with previous testing. Anyway, thank you. Rocky was, oh, I thought you were pushing your, no. Meredith,
So, hi, Andrew. I just have a concern about this information for property owners and residents sheet because it says
Yeah, please.
below the 20 parts per trillion, that nobody to contact, they can choose to do periodic sampling. You might want to add treatment. You don't really have to. It's not a recommendation. And then way at the bottom, next to that asterisk, it says, could consider reaching out to the Board of Health or a medical professional. I mean, we know that this is a cumulative chemical, and so someone could live in their house with 10 parts per trillion for 30 years, and that's going to build up. And so that is going to put them at a significant increase. So I really caution us to ever say that under 20 parts per trillion is okay. And I understand that the state currently at this moment says 20 parts per trillion, under 20 parts per trillion is safe. We all in this room and anyone that watches this that knows anything about PFAS knows that no level is safe. So how can we give this out to people saying that 20 parts per trillion, under 20 parts per trillion is safe? Like, I just think that's false advertising. And I really feel like if we're looking out for the health of our community, we should be saying, if you get a non-detect, it just means that it's testing lower than what our tests can show. And if you test anything over that, you should consult the Board of Health. You should look at a treatment center. Like, no level is safe. So why are we saying that Nantucket likes to tout that we're, ahead of the curve on this and we're doing all these wonderful things. And there are some great things that we are doing, but this is like old old news, and I really think we should be giving out accurate information. And I like what you've put together there, but I really feel like we need to give out accurate information, and this is not accurate. I
Yeah.
don't want people feeling that way.
I appreciate those comments. Ultimately, these are recommendations and the fact sheet centering a little bit on requirements. So, you're not required to treat if you detect over 20, but treating is a good idea. If you test before 20, we're just not requiring anyone to do that. Same thing about talking to your doctor. It's a great idea to talk to your doctor if you've been exposed to PFAS at any concentration, which most people likely have. So these are great points, and I will think if we can incorporate them into this fact sheet. For what it's worth, I'm also following up individually with each person who gets a detective PFAS to let them know their options. So I do plan on doing that individual follow-up for each person.
Can we make it a little bit stronger in that sheet of not just like test periodically? Like, I really think there is significant research out there that cumulative exposure is very likely to cause a problem. And so you should, I mean, obviously you're not going to walk the person to their doctor, but I mean, you should give them you should test periodically, but like, you should think about not drinking the water in your house, maybe not using it to like cook things. Boiling is going to concentrate it down more.
Yep.
So making coffee or tea with it, or, if you have young children, not having them drink it. I mean, I think that there are a lot more we can put in there to make it
But more
boost it up
healthy.
a little
Yeah.
about how important it is that no level is safe.
Andrew,
Yeah.
quick question just about.
please, Carrie.
And I should know this, but I don't. If it says non-detect, does that just mean it's below 20, or is there a threshold for which non-detect kicks in?
So
What does
the-
that, below, no, how does that work below 20?
Yeah, so the reporting limit is typically 2 nanograms per liter for each compound. So Meredith is exactly right. If you get a non-detect, you could still have PFAS in your water, and it just doesn't pop up on the
report?
test. So if you have 2 nanograms, if you have a non-detect, I would guess you likely have PFAS in your water at some concentration below 2 nanograms per liter. Just because PFAS are ubiquitous, unfortunately. So a non-detect means that the very impressive laboratory methods that Malcolm was talking about can't detect it. Can't guarantee it's not there though, which is somewhat frightening.
But that, I think it kind of supports what Meredith is saying, is that because there is a fluff factor there that's not healthy, and what we know is not healthy. So is there a way to provide better guidance under that cloud, that at least directs people to be more aware that the cumulative exposure is the issue. It's not just like the one-shot thing, and if you have 20, that it builds up over time. And somehow to make that type of message clearer, and that a non-detect doesn't mean it's not in your water. I mean, I think those are both factual, and I think if we can be healthy, we can have a healthier message that is factual.
Yeah, let me work on making some updates. I think we do need to emphasize that there's no safe level of exposure. And it's a great point that you could still have PFAS in your water, even if it's below the detection thresholds. And in fact, all of us have been exposed to PFAS in some way or another, whether it's through our water or food or soil or consumer products. Unfortunately, we've all been exposed. So yeah, a little bit more awareness about that fact, I think will go a long way. So these are great comments. I appreciate them.
Mr. Director has his hand.
Yes, so I just want to first thank Andrew. He's been fantastic about really, getting to the core of the issue. And we are certainly open to changing anything that we put online, I think the issue is it has to be scientifically valid before we will do that. And but if you have specific comments or specific questions or edits that you see that you think would be helpful, we're happy to take those. And like I said, as long as it's based on something that we can verify, then we're happy to consider, making those changes. And then I think something else that Andrew, really brought out that I think is important to note is that he is contacting everyone that has any detection of PFAS, any of those results, and he's talking to them about options. And so that is something for the community that he is providing a wonderful service.
I think that's the question, because we don't want, people have an outsource of where they can talk and discuss it. It's easier than trying to write it in a site. It just, you either say it wrong, incorrectly, or scare people. So it's the kind of thing needs a personal one-on-one kind of discussion.
I also think maybe noting a lot of insurance companies cover the cost of having your levels tested in your blood. I know that the town insurance does cover it. So as they are probably the largest employer on the island, I think that it's nice for people to know they could call their insurance company, but it is covered by a lot of insurance companies.
Yeah, the point is
Meredith.
Texas is all dose and duration. And probably your blood level is probably significantly more important than your water level. But
I think there are two things here, and I don't know if it's appropriate to combine them. One is that I feel that the whole community needs to be educated in terms of what PFAS is, what it can do to you, how it gets into your body, where it comes from and all that. And I have to admit that I have not read this carefully. I don't know if that's in there, but I don't know if it should be combined, because this thing, this flyer, seems to be more targeted toward those people who might be at greater risk because of where they live or because of, where they get their water or all that kind of thing. So is there any thinking that we might just have a general education thing, Rocky, like what you were speaking about a minute or two ago?
Yeah, so that's the reach part, right? The idea is in what Andrew laid out regarding communication plan is hitting as many different types of communication methods that we can to try and reach as broad an audience as we can. Like you said, putting something on a website is not necessarily going to get everybody's eyes on it. But if we are using, some of the things he talked about with social media and a newspaper article and newsletters or other ways to reach people who wouldn't necessarily read a website.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
Can I chime in?
our goal and our plan.
okay, thank you very much, Andrew.
I was going to add one more thing. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, these are all great topics. Meredith, you mentioned reaching out to your doctor. I have a social media post planned for that with the ICD codes and the lab testing codes. So we're going to get that out there soon. Malcolm, you bring up other sources of PFAS. That's going to be future communications. I feel like we have a fact sheet that has a lot of detail and is maybe a little bit difficult to read, to be honest, given how much information is already on there. And unfortunately, this fact sheet isn't going to be able to cover all topics, but I do hope to continue to develop additional fact sheets for more specific things, how to talk to your doctor, how to shop PFAS free, things like that. And so I'll plan to report back next month on additional communication activities.
Thank you. Director's report.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, just a few topics. I won't take a whole lot of time. I did want to bring up that the June Board of Health meeting is scheduled for June 19th, which is a holiday. And so we can move it,
we'll
at
change it.
discretion of the board, we can move it to the 18th. If you prefer, or we could, cancel it, whatever you all would like to do.
I think with everything that's going on and we keep deferring things to the next month and, you know, if we ever don't meet, we're gonna really wanna,
No, we could do it, we could keep it on Thursdays and do it a week early or a week late.
Okay, whatever the
Is
board's
that-
discretion.
Is that okay?
so the 12th.
Well, we can do the 12th through the 26th, 25th, 26th. Actually, it's very interesting. The 25th, the select board will be nominating a new member or an old member that's applied to be reinstated. Although they won't take office till July.
1st.
Okay, so, I mean, if Terry wants to stay on,
I'm going to apply, you know, but,
he will,
I mean, but we'll see.
he may or may not be appointed on the
Right.
25th.
Right.
So,
Oh, I see.
it doesn't
So
matter.
let's do it on the 12th.
No,
right?
it doesn't matter
It
because
doesn't
he
really
wouldn't take
matter. I mean,
office
you know,
till next month.
I'm not, I can still show up. and
So I would do
I'm still here till the 1st.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
I think the earlier in June, the better. I think the later in June it gets, the more crowded things get.
12th.
The 12th.
12th.
I go with the
Okay.
12th.
that's what.
We're going to do the 12th.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I think we'll just have to check the schedule on the room to make sure that we can.
Oh, right.
Right, yeah, we'll confirm that this room is available.
Or
If
find
not,
another room.
Maybe the trailer, but we'll determine
We can-
what's available at that
We
time.
can do it upstairs, we can do the trailer, we can do whatever.
Okay, we'll target the 12th and
The weather's
Try and
nice, we'll
identify
do it
a
on my front porch.
Yeah, yeah.
measles, 640 total cases, I guess, nationwide, none on Nantucket. In speaking with Board Member Lepre, that it seems like our schools are in pretty good shape as far as measles vaccination penetration, 96, 97%, which is great news.
That's
Wow,
fabulous.
That's really good.
We've also been reaching out separately to some of the daycare, the schools for the younger kids, and we seem to be in pretty good shape there as well. So those are very positive signs. Now, I should mention that at least some data that I've seen, for instance, out of New Mexico and an outbreak that they had out there, the largest group of people affected was actually 18 and over. So something to think about if as far as vaccination plans and should we have a case on the island, and really trying to determine, it would require a outbreak investigation, taking a look at the close contacts, ensuring that we are able to vaccinate those at risk or that have had contact that might be at risk. Federal funding cuts, we're still trying to get a handle on that. I know there's been cuts everywhere in the country. Most of the public health funding in the country is federal funding. It comes from the federal government. So there's a lot of concern around what that could mean to individual programs. I think here on Nantucket, vaccine availability for the fall is something that we are thinking about, and how we might mitigate an issue where we don't have the typical vaccine that we have had in the past, particularly for flu and COVID, but everything from the outbreaks I just mentioned. So one of the things that one of the programs that's been cut is something called Section 317, and it's a federal government program that provides funding for in outbreak situations. So if you have an outbreak and you have people that need to be vaccinated, they wouldn't have to pay because they would be covered under that program. Now, if that program goes away, then that's something that we have to think about and plan for, and we have started doing that. Going to have a new intern for some of the summer, starting June 3rd. So looking forward to having her here. Vassar College student, so we anticipate her being able to help us with thinking through our vaccine penetration and doing better than we have in the past, certainly last year, on getting more people vaccinated, so we don't have that big flu or COVID numbers that we had this last year on Nantucket. Serve Safe, Heather taught that class. I guess she's gone now. They had 15 people take the test, 13 passed. which is great. And she's actually been working with the other two to see what we can do about maybe getting them retested, because the more people we can get with that certification on island, the better it is for Nantucket. That's it. That's all I have. Unless you have any questions.
No, that's terrific.
We did the Board of Health, though, by 10, 12 years ago, did a vaccine survey of the schools and the private daycares and so forth. And we actually had a higher rate than the state. I mean, it was a percentage or two, but it was a pretty decent.
I think that the numbers are very good in the schools.
Yeah.
I think these year-to-year vaccines is, particularly the flu, is where the numbers that I described to you, that we did worse than many other counties in the state. They showed us that 29% of the people got the flu vaccine, but they also gave us a population denominator of 14,400, which appears to be wrong. Everybody
Yes.
that I spoke to believes that that is an inaccurate number. So if you add more people, then our vaccine penetration is actually lower. So if we have 20,000 people, our penetration is 19%, and there are some counties that have hit 55, 60%. So that's one of the things we want to do, is understand what those counties did to get to 55 and 60% that we might be able to implement.
Yeah, I mean, it was like our COVID numbers, we had the same problem. 'Cause
How
they
do
were
you
all
explain that,
calculated
Rob?
on a much
You
smaller.
have such a high percentage of kids vaccinated, more than most places, and less for,
Well, there are requirements around vaccine for children when they are in school. And so COVID and flu is something that has to be done every single year. And so we might have we make much higher number one year and then much lower the next, and any number of circumstances that could have contributed to that. But that's one of the things we want to try and find out is there something we're missing that we can implement here on the island that will improve our numbers. And we only had 2 flu clinics last year, 2 flu and COVID clinics. Maybe we can do more. Because funding was an issue. So that's one of the things that we need to think through and see if we can get more availability of dates, because we do want to do better in that area.
Would that be something that WPI, the Worcester Polytech student, could focus on? I mean, they do great work, and their data is their thing.
Are you talking about
The Worcester Polytech.
as far as
Institute,
collecting the
Yeah,
information?
the ones to address, kind of help collect that data.
Yeah,
about
so
the
that's,
vaccine lower rate. I mean,
but
it's outside, it wouldn't be draining internal resources, but it's getting quality, people who good with data, and also under the guidance of the Department of Health.
Yeah, I mean, sure, no, that's an option. I think the reason I was thinking about having the intern do it is you have one person do it. Because if you have one person reaching out, the questions are asked in the same way. And the same questions are asked, so you're going to get a more representative response rate from the people that you're reaching out to. But the data part, I think we pretty much have covered too.
I think that's a great project for the intern. Any other questions from the board?
I don't know if this is possible for the town to do, or the year, I want to say it was right after COVID. There was one year that the hospital did a drive-up
Yes.
flu clinic.
yes.
And I would bet that that year we had very high numbers. I know we had very high numbers in the school.
Yep.
2 or 3 years ago, the state tried to implement the flu vaccine as being required for school. And they sort of started it and then said, no, it's not required. And so to Ann, that it's not a required vaccine. So I would say we have pretty low numbers. In the last 5 years, I've had pretty high numbers of kids getting the flu. So I think a drive-up vaccine is like that. And I've had parents come up to me and say, if they just brought that back, we would just go and you just drive up. Everyone in the car gets their shot and then you just drive on.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's hard to organize.
That's great. I hadn't thought about that, and that is something that we can think through. In the hospital, I should say, we have met with them recently, in fact, this week. And so I think that they are a great partner in trying to think through how we can work together and pool our resources, because At the end of the day, we have 11 people in this health department. And so it's not, we're not overstaffed in any way, and the hospital isn't either. So we have to make the best use of our resources. So being able to pool them and to determine things that might work like that is something that we want to try if we can.
The hospital.
That's a great suggestion, because I remember when they did it at the hospital, and I think with my second or third COVID shot, I actually got in Florida in a dry, and it was absolutely amazing. There were
Yeah.
200, 300 cars, and it was like 2 minutes, you know.
We had the drive-through COVID clinic too at the school.
Yeah.
For a couple times, that was very fun.
You have to make it easy for people.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing we have to think about is documentation, right? We have to, COVID was a little bit of a unique situation in that as far as the records that were kept and where they were submitted. So we have to think about ensuring that they go into the MIS system for the state. And so
You know, that's what
if we
slowed
can
down
do
the
that, if we
process.
can do that while somebody drives up, then that's great, but that's something we have to consider.
Well, I think they must have been doing it,
Yeah, we
right?
did for the COVID. I mean,
So with-
that's what slowed it down some was, just all the paperwork.
With the
and
hospital,
logging.
But they gave you
Because you have to
the,
give your insurance card.
they
I
gave you a
remember that.
card,
Yeah,
right?
let's one at a time. You know, we're a loose group. Usually people have to ask permission through the chair. And I haven't always done my job here because I like the informality, but let's not interrupt each other.
through the chair.
Or we'll go back to, my God, you're not going to talk unless you talk to me.
The hospital's electronic medical record, Epic, did not for a while, but now speaks to MIIS. So when they give a shot and they enter it in Epic, it goes into the, I would say 95% of the time. I look at a lot of immunization records. So I think that that is a way, and the hospital also got a grant to do childhood immunization catch-up. So a big shout out to the hospital. They've had 3, they had 2 days in January, a Saturday and Sunday, and they just had one April 12th where we sent home information and parents could just walk in anytime between 8 and 3. Their kids, and we sent home, and they could also look up whatever vaccines they needed, and they could give them the vaccine. So that has really helped. I am worried a little bit about measles with the school vacation, and there's been a few breakthrough cases, I think, and cases in children who have maybe only had one, because you don't necessarily get your second one until you're 4 or 5, between 4 and 6. So I would see that, and adults is maybe where our weak point is. And I don't know what to do about that. I've been thinking about this a lot, waiting to see when we get it, and I think that's our weak point.
Yeah, so that's certainly something we think about. I mean, if the first shot for measles, you get it between 12 and 15 months. But for younger than that, you don't have that yet. And so, but that one shot is about 93% efficient. It goes to about 97% with that second shot at between age 4 and age 6. So, but those are all good points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, do we, anybody want to stay?
Motion to adjourn?
There a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman says aye. We'll see you next month.
Yeah,